The afternoon sun burned over the empty Montana plains, turning the dusty road into a river of golden heat. The wind moved slowly through the dry grass, carrying the smell of pine and forgotten dreams. Along that lonely road, a single father pulled the reins of his tired wagon, searching for a place where he could finally stop running from the pain behind him. His name was Daniel Whitaker. For 2 years, Daniel had carried a grief that never seemed to grow lighter. Since the day he lost his wife, Clara, he had learned how to live with silence. He had learned how to cook simple meals, repair broken things, and comfort his young daughter when she missed the mother she barely remembered. But every morning, when the sun rose, Daniel still felt the empty space beside him. He had traveled across several towns looking for work. He was not searching for riches. He was not looking for fame. He only wanted a place where his daughter could grow up without seeing sadness in every corner. Beside him on the wagon seat sat his 6-year-old daughter, Emma. She held a small cloth doll tightly against her chest. The doll was old and worn with faded fabric and loose stitching. It was the last thing Clara had made for her before she passed away. Emma rarely spoke about her mother anymore. Not because she had forgotten, because sometimes a child's heart becomes too heavy for words. Daniel looked ahead as the wagon moved toward a small ranch sitting beneath the mountains. But instead of finding a peaceful homestead, he found something else. A broken fence. The wooden rails had fallen across the dry ground. Several posts were cracked and leaning. The entire property looked like it had survived too many storms and too many battles. Standing beside the damaged fence was a woman. She was alone. Her name was Rose Carter. She wore a simple dark blue dress that had been repaired many times. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but tiredness showed in her eyes. She was not waiting for someone to save her. She was simply trying to hold together what life had left behind. Her husband, William Carter, had died 2 years earlier during a terrible ranch fire. He had gone back into the flames to rescue their cattle, and he never returned. After that day, everything changed. The ranch lost money. The crops struggled. The bills continued growing. And the woman who once believed she had a future slowly learned what it meant to carry every responsibility alone. Daniel stopped the wagon near the broken fence. He climbed down slowly and removed his hat. "Mrs. Carter," the woman turned toward him. "I heard you might need someone who knows how to repair things." Rose looked at him carefully. She had heard many promises before. Men came offering help, but most wanted something in return. Daniel did not look like those men. He looked tired, like someone who had been fighting his own battles. He walked toward the fence and examined the broken rails. The wood was old and weak. Years of harsh winters and summer heat had taken their toll. "This fence won't last through another storm," Daniel said. Rose stepped closer. "My husband always said he would fix it." Her voice became quiet. "But some promises are left unfinished." Daniel looked at her. For a moment, neither of them spoke, because both of them understood what unfinished things felt like. Rose placed her hand on one of the broken fence posts. Her fingers rested against the rough wood. "The fence is broken," she said softly. Then she looked directly at him. "But so am I." Daniel stayed silent. He expected sadness. He expected anger. But what he saw was something different. A woman who was tired but still standing. A woman who had lost almost everything but refused to surrender. Rose took a slow breath. "Fix whichever one you can." Those words stayed with Daniel, because he understood them better than anyone. He had spent years repairing things that could be repaired. Broken wagons, broken tools, broken homes. But the hardest things to fix were the ones nobody could see. He looked back at the fence. Then he looked at Rose. "I'll start with the fence," he said. A small smile appeared on her face. "That seems like the sensible place to begin." At that moment, Emma climbed down from the wagon. She watched Rose carefully. The little girl had become quiet since losing her mother. She rarely trusted strangers. But Rose noticed her immediately. "Hello, sweetheart," Rose said gently. Emma looked at Daniel, waiting for permission. Daniel nodded. Rose smiled. "I have some fresh lemonade inside, and maybe I can find something sweet if you help me search." Emma slowly followed her toward the house. Daniel watched them disappear through the doorway. For the first time in a long while, he heard something he thought he had lost forever. A child's footsteps running toward a home. He turned back to the fence. Then he unloaded his tools. A hammer, a saw, a pouch of nails, and the patience of a man who had spent his entire life putting broken things back together. The work was hard beneath the Montana sun. Daniel pulled out damaged posts and dug new holes into the stubborn earth. His hands became covered in dirt. Sweat rolled down his face. But he welcomed the pain, because physical work was easier than carrying memories. Each strike of the hammer echoed across the ranch. For the first time in months, the silence around him did not feel empty. It felt peaceful. Late that afternoon, the kitchen door opened. Emma stepped outside, holding a small metal cup. Rose followed behind her with a pitcher of lemonade. Emma walked slowly across the yard. The drink shook slightly in her hands. Daniel lowered his hammer and waited. When she reached him, she held out the cup. "For me?" Daniel asked. Emma nodded. He accepted it carefully. "Thank you, sweetheart." The little girl looked at the new fence. Then she touched one of the fresh wooden rails. Daniel noticed. "You want to help?" Emma looked unsure. He handed her the handle of the hammer. "It's heavy," he said. Then he placed his hand beneath hers. "But you don't have to hold it alone." Together, they pushed the nail into the wood. Tab, tab, tab. The nail finally settled into place. Emma stared at the fence. A tiny smile appeared on her face. It was small, almost invisible. But Daniel saw it. And for the first time in years, he felt something inside him begin to heal. Rose watched from a distance. She had invited a man to repair a fence. But now she was seeing something she never expected. A father teaching his daughter how to trust again. A man who carried pain but still gave kindness. And perhaps a person who understood her broken heart better than anyone else ever could. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Daniel finished another section of the fence. Rose stepped onto the porch carrying a plate of food. "You work like a man trying to outrun something," she said. Daniel looked at the fading sunlight. "Maybe I am." Rose sat quietly. "What are you running from?" Daniel looked toward the wagon where his daughter's small belongings rested. "A past I can't change." Rose lowered her eyes. "I understand that." The evening became quiet. Two strangers sat on a lonely ranch, both carrying losses, both surrounded by things that needed repair. And neither of them knew yet that the broken fence between them would become the beginning of something neither had expected. The next morning, the sun rose over Carter Ranch with a warmth that had been missing for years. Daniel Whitaker woke before sunrise, as he always did. Life had taught him that work waited for no one. He stepped outside his small wagon and looked toward the ranch house. For a moment, he simply stood there. The place looked different in the morning light. Not because the broken fence had changed. Not because the land had suddenly become easier. But because there was something about the ranch that felt alive. A feeling he had not experienced in a long time. Daniel picked up his tools and continued repairing the fence. He worked carefully, replacing weak boards with stronger ones. Every piece of wood had a purpose. Every nail had to hold. Rose Carter watched him from the porch while holding a cup of coffee. She had seen many men work before. But Daniel was different. He did not rush. He did not complain. He treated every repair as if it mattered. You always work this quietly? Rose asked. Daniel looked up. What do you mean? You hardly speak while you work. A faint smile crossed his face. My father used to say a person can tell a lot about someone by the way they fix things. Rose looked curious. What did he mean? Daniel placed another wooden rail into position. He said careless hands usually create more damage. Patient hands restore what was lost. Rose looked toward the broken fence. Sounds like your father was a wise man. He was. Daniel paused. He taught me everything I know. The silence that followed was gentle. Rose understood that some memories were precious because they hurt. Later that morning, Emma walked outside carrying her little cloth doll. Rose noticed the doll immediately. That is a beautiful doll. Emma looked down at it. My mom made her. Rose's expression softened. She must have been a wonderful woman. Emma nodded. She was. It was the first time Rose had heard Emma speak about her mother. Only 2 words, but they carried so much emotion. Daniel noticed too. He looked away quickly, pretending to focus on the fence. Because hearing his daughter's voice brought both happiness and pain. Rose walked closer. Does your doll have a name? Emma held it carefully. Lily. Rose smiled. That is a lovely name. Emma looked at Rose. Can you fix her? Rose looked down. One of the doll's arms was nearly separated from the body. I think I can. She brought the doll inside and returned with a small sewing basket. Emma sat beside her on the porch while Rose carefully repaired the loose stitching. Daniel watched from the fence. Something about the sight touched him. His daughter had not sat with another woman like that since Clara had died. For years, he had worried Emma would forget what it felt like to have warmth around her. But now she was smiling. A real smile. That evening, Daniel finished another section of the fence. Rose brought dinner outside. You should eat before you fall over, she said. Daniel laughed quietly. I have survived worse. Rose looked at him. Is that what you always tell yourself? Daniel stopped. What? That you can survive anything. He looked down at his hands. They were covered in dirt and small cuts. I suppose. Rose sat across from him. Surviving is important. She looked toward the dark fields. But sometimes people become so good at surviving that they forget they are allowed to live. Daniel looked at her. Those words felt familiar. Because he had spent years doing exactly that. The next few days passed with steady work. Daniel repaired the fence. Rose repaired things inside the house. And slowly, without either of them realizing it, they began repairing each other. Daniel fixed the broken gate near the barn. Rose prepared extra meals for him and Emma. Emma started spending more time outside. She helped Rose collect eggs. She helped water the small garden. And sometimes, when she thought nobody was watching, she laughed. Daniel heard it one afternoon. He froze. The sound was so unexpected that he almost dropped the wooden board in his hands. Emma was laughing. Not a small, quiet laugh. A real child's laugh. Rose noticed Daniel standing still. She missed that, she said softly. Daniel swallowed. I thought maybe she forgot how. Rose looked at him. Children don't forget joy. She smiled. They just need someone to remind them it is safe. Daniel looked away because he did not want Rose to see the tears in his eyes. But she understood. She understood grief. She understood the moments when a person could only hold so much. A week after Daniel arrived, trouble came to Carter Ranch. A man named Victor Hale rode onto the property. He was a wealthy land buyer who had been trying to purchase farms across the valley. He wore expensive clothes and carried himself like someone who believed money could solve every problem. Rose immediately became serious when she saw him. Victor removed his hat. Mrs. Carter. Rose did not smile. Mr. Hale. Daniel noticed the tension between them. Victor looked around the ranch. I see you have found help. Rose stood straight. Yes. Victor looked at Daniel. A hired hand. Daniel stepped forward. Someone fixing a fence. Victor gave a small, arrogant smile. Some fences are not worth repairing. Rose's expression hardened. This ranch is not for sale. Victor sighed. You know your situation. The bank payment is coming soon. You are running out of options. Daniel looked at Rose. She remained silent, but he saw the worry in her eyes. Victor continued. You lost your husband, you lost your crops, you lost your money. There is no shame in accepting reality. Daniel's jaw tightened, but Rose answered before he could. Reality is not decided by men who profit from other people's struggles. Victor's smile disappeared. You should think carefully. He turned his horse. The offer will not remain forever. Then he rode away. The dust settled behind him. Daniel looked at Rose. How bad is it? She looked toward the ranch. Bad enough. Why didn't you tell me? Rose gave a tired smile. You came here to fix a fence, Daniel, not save my life. Daniel looked at the repaired wood standing behind them. I think I already learned something. What? Some things are connected. Rose looked confused. Daniel glanced at the ranch. A broken fence affects the cattle. A broken roof affects the house. A broken heart affects everything. Rose became quiet because she knew he was right. That night, Daniel sat beside the fire outside his wagon. He opened an old wooden box. Inside were his savings. Money he had collected over years of hard work. Money he planned to use someday to build a permanent home for Emma. He counted the coins carefully. Then he looked toward the ranch house. He saw Rose through the window. She was sitting at the table, writing numbers on old papers, trying to solve a problem she should not have had to face alone. Daniel closed the box. The next morning, Rose found a small envelope beside her sewing basket. Inside was enough money to help with the upcoming payment. There was only one note. From one neighbor to another. Rose immediately knew who left it. She found Daniel near the fence. You did this. Daniel continued working. It is a loan. I cannot accept this. Yes, you can. Rose shook her head. I don't want anyone thinking I needed saving. Daniel stopped. Then he looked at her. I don't think you need saving. Rose became silent. I think you needed someone to stand beside you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then a sudden sound came from the barn. Emma screamed. Daniel dropped his tools and ran. Rose followed close behind. Inside the barn, Emma stood frozen near the doorway. A frightened animal had entered through a broken section of the fence. Daniel moved between his daughter and the danger. Emma, come to me. The little girl stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, and when she reached him, she grabbed his hand. Daddy. Daniel froze, because it was the first time she had spoken that word in years. He held her tightly, and in that moment he realized something. Maybe he had not failed his daughter. Maybe he had been giving her the one thing she needed most. Someone who stayed. The sound of Emma calling him Daddy stayed with Daniel Whitaker long after the danger had passed. That one word had carried more healing than anything else in the world. For 2 years, Daniel had wondered if his daughter had lost a part of herself when her mother died. He had worried that the sadness in her heart was something he could never reach. But standing there in the old barn, holding his little girl close, he finally understood. Emma had not forgotten how to love. She had only been waiting to feel safe again. Rose Carter watched the two of them from the doorway. She saw the way Daniel held his daughter. Not like a man protecting something fragile, but like a father who had spent every day choosing to stay. And for the first time in years, Rose felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. After that morning, the ranch changed. Not all at once. Not like a fairy tale. The fences still needed repairs. The bills still needed paying. The winters were still harsh. But the people living there were different. Daniel continued working on the property every day. He repaired the barn roof. He fixed the broken wagon wheels. He strengthened the remaining fence posts. And every morning, Emma followed him around the ranch. She asked questions. She carried small tools. She learned how things worked. The little girl who once hid behind silence slowly began finding her voice again. Rose noticed every change. She noticed how Daniel never forced Emma to speak. He simply waited. He gave her patience. He gave her kindness. And slowly, the little girl who had been trapped inside her grief began returning. One evening, Rose found Emma sitting on the porch with a piece of paper. "What are you drawing?" Rose asked. Emma looked down shyly. "The ranch." Rose smiled. "Why?" Emma thought for a moment. Then she answered softly. "Because it feels like home." Rose became still. Those words touched something deep inside her. Because for a long time, she had stopped believing the ranch could ever feel like that again. Later that night, Rose found Daniel sitting outside near the repaired fence. The moonlight covered the fields. "You heard what she said?" Rose asked. Daniel looked up. "What?" "Emma called this place home." A small smile appeared on his face. "I heard." Rose sat beside him. "You know, when you arrived, I thought you were just another man passing through." Daniel looked toward the mountains. "I thought the same thing about myself." Rose looked at him. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a slow breath. "For years, I kept telling myself I was searching for a place to settle." He looked at the repaired fence. "But maybe I was really searching for a reason to stop running." Rose understood. Because she had been doing the same thing. She had stayed on the ranch, but a part of her had been living in the past. Holding onto memories. Holding onto pain. Holding onto the life she lost. "I was angry at Thomas for leaving me," Rose admitted quietly. Daniel looked at her. "He didn't choose to leave." "I know." Her voice became softer. But sometimes grief makes a person angry at things that were never anyone's fault. Daniel nodded. "I blamed myself after Clara died." Rose looked at him. "Why?" "Because I kept thinking there was something I should have done." He looked down. "One more doctor, one more mile, one more thing I could have tried." Rose placed her hand gently over his. "Daniel, sometimes love is not measured by whether we could save someone." She looked into his eyes. "It is measured by how much we loved them while they were here." Those words stayed with him. Because nobody had ever said that before. A few days later, another storm came through the valley. The wind howled through the night. Rain struck the roof. And by morning, everyone feared the worst. Daniel rushed outside. The repaired fence had survived. The old barn had survived. The ranch had survived. Rose stood beside him, looking across the land. For the first time since Thomas died, she smiled at the sight. "We did it," she whispered. Daniel looked at her. "No." She turned. "We did it." Those simple words meant more than either of them realized. Because neither of them had repaired the ranch alone. They had rebuilt it together. But the biggest challenge was still waiting. The bank payment. The one Victor Hale had warned them about. Daniel and Rose traveled to town together. They walked into the bank carrying the money needed for the payment. The banker looked surprised. "I expected you to sell." Rose placed the payment on the desk. "I'm not selling." The banker looked at Daniel. "Then you found help." Rose glanced at Daniel. Then she smiled. "No." She looked around the bank. "I found family." The banker did not answer. Because he understood something. There was a difference between needing someone and choosing someone. And Rose had chosen. When they returned to the ranch, they found the neighbors waiting. Word had spread. People from across the valley had come to help repair the remaining damage from the storm. Some brought lumber. Some brought tools. Some brought food. Nobody called it charity. They called it neighbors helping neighbors. Daniel watched Rose greet everyone. He watched Emma laugh with other children. And he realized something. He had spent years searching for a place where his daughter could belong. But maybe belonging was not something a person found. Maybe it was something people built together. That summer, Carter Ranch held its first celebration in years. The old wooden tables were placed outside. Lanterns hung from the porch. Music filled the valley. Emma danced in the grass. Rose laughed. And Daniel stood nearby watching the two people who had changed his life. A neighbor walked up beside him. "You planning to leave after the work is finished?" Daniel looked toward the ranch house. The wagon that carried all his belongings still sat near the trees. For years, it had represented freedom. But now it felt different. It felt like proof of a life he was ready to leave behind. Daniel smiled. "No." The man looked surprised. "No." Daniel shook his head. "I think I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." Later that evening, when the stars filled the sky, Daniel found Rose sitting on the porch. The same porch where she once sat alone. The same porch where she wondered if she would ever feel happiness again. "You know," Rose said, "when you first arrived, I asked you to fix whichever broken thing you could." Daniel smiled. "I remember." She looked at the repaired fence. "You fixed the fence." Then she looked at herself. "And somehow you helped me too." Daniel sat beside her. "You helped me more than you know." Rose looked at him. "How?" Daniel looked toward Emma, who was sleeping peacefully inside the house. "You reminded me that a person can love again without forgetting the person they lost." Rose's eyes filled with emotion. Neither of them rushed the moment. Neither of them needed to. Some things were worth building slowly. Like trust. Like a home. Like love. Months later, the people of the Bitterroot Valley gathered once again. This time it was not for a storm. It was for a wedding. Rose wore a simple dress. Daniel wore his best coat. Emma stood beside them, holding her little cloth doll. The same doll Rose had repaired. The same doll that once represented everything Emma had lost. Now it represented something new. A second chance. Years later, people in the valley still talked about Carter Ranch. They talked about the broken fence that brought two lonely people together. They talked about the little girl who found her voice again. They talked about the widow who learned that surviving was not the same as living. And they talked about the man who arrived with a hammer in his hand and a broken heart he never mentioned. Because sometimes the strongest people are not the ones who never break. They are the ones who allow someone kind enough to help them mend. And sometimes the smallest repair can lead to the greatest change. The fence was fixed. The ranch was saved. But the greatest thing rebuilt was not made of wood or stone. It was a family.